Blake Lively's subpoena gate issue. I'm scratching my head to find a legitimate reason for the Van Zandt lawsuit.
Van Zandt's subpoena was released by her own people. Whoever that was that released it from your own camp to Daily Mail, they wanted to get you. It was for sure a mole.
Ryan Reynolds made an appearance today at the Time 100 Summit. Of course, avoided any questions about the lawsuit, but also his wife. And I think we finally broke him.
Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds' shady company named Van Zandt has been exposed. They have both manipulated the legal system to get back at Justin Baldoni, but it looks like a few slip-ups have revealed their plan, and now their sketchy plan is working against them. So let's get into it. The It Ends With Us lawsuit has gotten even messier because we found evidence that Ryan Reynolds is much more involved in Blake Lively's scheme than he's trying to make it out to be. One of you guys left me a comment in response to a video I made about the Van Zandt Business LLC. It seems like this company Van Zandt tried to go and gather evidence against Justin Baldoni before this lawsuit was properly filed. Tammy, thank you for your comment. You write, here's some more info that you need to know about Blake's sham company Van Zandt. It was established in 2010, the year that she met and filmed a movie with Ryan Reynolds. On the company's paperwork, the name Eric Binder is listed. He is Ryan's business manager. They used his name so no one could draw connection to Ryan. Just the company name, though, is a dead giveaway. Ryan is always using the name Van for social media, and Zan is because Blake grew up in Tarzana. Actually, it sounds like Ryan named the company. Also, why would you create a company with someone you weren't involved with them in some way? I mean, keep in mind that both Blake and Ryan were with their respective partners at the time when they had gotten together and in the year 2010. So it's bizarre to see that they would have created a company together at that time if they weren't romantically involved. The address of the Van Zandt company is the same as Ryan's company. This is not an accident, but it's an extreme slip up. Now that this has been exposed, we are discovering that there is so much more involved with Van Zandt. Justin Baldoni's former podcast partner, Liz Plank, has an address tied to the exact address of the Van Zandt company, which makes me think that it's probably some kind of business firm that is operating these LLCs. Liz was so close to Ryan and Blake that she ran around calling them a threesome. That's weird, but she continues, to me, it seems like we have just barely begun to dive down the rabbit hole of info that we'll find after digging into this and even more of the people involved. Exactly how did Liz end up co-hosting a podcast with Justin Baldoni? But the bigger question is why and how long ago did they decide to attack Justin? Now, Tammy has a great point. There is a lot to uncover here. This headline reads, Justin Baldoni fires back at Blake Lively and accuses her of abusing the process as this legal filing comes to surface. Blake Lively secretly filed a subpoena through her company, Van Zandt, without her name attached months before publicizing the harassment allegations. Justin's legal team is now accusing Blake of strategic legal abuse of the process. He accused Blake and her company of using a bogus lawsuit to obtain subpoena power without proper oversight. Their legal dispute stems from previous allegations and these text messages that Blake had included in her lawsuit and the New York Times included in their article. These are the kind of receipts that they were able to gather by putting in this fraudulent subpoena. I say fraudulent because that's what Justin Baldoni's team is calling them, because they didn't go through the due process of the legal system. On September 27th, 2024, a plaintiff known as Van Zandt filed court documents against unidentified defendants. About 10 people listed, but no names were named, Brian Friedman, Justin Baldoni's lawyer, is specifically calling out the fact that both Blake and Ryan manipulated something here, because why is Van Zandt being included into a lawsuit that Van Zandt has zero connection to the movie, to the production, to anyone? So it's really just a random character being added into the mix, but why? Unless you're trying to do something sketchy, he said, quote, there's nothing normal about this. He added that a party that has no connection to these proceedings asserting a breach of contract against another party they claim cannot identify itself does not qualify. I mean, that is weird to say, hey, I have to get these text messages from you, these phone records from you, but I can't tell you why, who I'm suing, or anything else, or who I really am. You know what's worse than getting injured? Fighting with the insurance company afterwards. They will often stall, delay, and lowball you because their goal is to pay you as little as possible because they are not on your side. That's where Morgan & Morgan comes in. They are the largest injury law firm in America with over 1,000 attorneys and millions of clients served. They've secured billions of dollars for settlements and verdicts, including a $26 million payout in Philadelphia. data, 40 times more than what the insurance company originally offered. And the best part about Morgan & Morgan is that they don't charge anything up front. There is no consulting fee, there's no hourly rate, there's no hidden cost by going and getting them to help you out. So if you've been hurt in an accident,
Morgan & Morgan has your back if you become their client.
you can go to forthepeople.com/Sloan or scan the QR code on the screen to start your claim now. You probably could get it submitted before this video is even over with, and it's not going to hurt to go and figure out how much you are owed. Thank you, Morgan & Morgan, for sponsoring this video, and enjoy.
Let's talk about the legal remedies in the Blake Lively subpoena gate issue. I'm scratching my head to find a legitimate reason for the Van Zandt lawsuit. I will say one thing that is going to be hard here is that a lot of these things are going to be shielded by privilege, but not everything. And my tinfoil hat goes to if they were like conspiring, including to commit crime, then that privilege might be out the door. Brian Friedman talks about abusive process, which is a tort, and he says he's going to seek like all of the remedies under the law, is what he's said to Daily Mail yesterday. It was published yesterday morning. I don't know when he said it, but I think he learned about this either Thursday night or Friday morning. So they are definitely doing a lot of research and figuring out their game plan. Generally, you have a regularly issued process, either civil or criminal. 2, you have an intent to do harm without excuse or justification. Okay, and 3, the use of that process in a perverted manner to obtain a collateral objective. New York Judiciary Law, Section 487, the statute deems it a misdemeanor for an attorney to engage in deceit or collusion with intent to deceive the court or any party. Violations can result in criminal penalties and treble damages in civil actions. There's also 22 NYCRR, Part 130. This regulation authorizes the court to impose costs and financial sanctions on attorneys or parties who engage in frivolous conduct. Then there's the model rules of professional conduct, which all attorneys have to abide by. And those are the model rules, so like every lawyer across the country, like those are your rules, but then states have their own specific rules.
Now, of course, Blake and Ryan's team have an explanation for this. Mike and Ezra said that this is normal and this is a legitimate method for detecting online attacks. I find it interesting that she is suing him on the basis of harassment, but she's so focused on this campaign, this made-up campaign that Justin Baldoni orchestrated to end her reputation. They claim that this lawsuit method, including Van Zandt and all of these does, was the perfect way, the most effective way to go and look into the online assaults that Blake Lively had experienced. They claim that Blake Lively's team took action based on credible information and used standard procedures, which they say are perfectly legal and suitable for pursuing claims and identifying unidentified criminals. Now, Stephanie Jones was the publicist who received this subpoena and complied to it. She's essentially the one who gave up the information to Blake Lively's team and really got the domino effect started. Brian Friedman said that in light of new evidence being uncovered almost daily, it has become imperative to amend our counterclaims against Stephanie Jones and Jones' work. Yesterday, Blake and Ryan attended the 2025 Time 100 Gala. At the same time, Brian Friedman was giving a statement saying that we're not surprised at all that Miss Stephanie Jones would instruct her legal team to go on record and mischaracterize the circumstances surrounding the sham subpoena and the Van Zandt lawsuit. So it looks like Stephanie Jones is still kind of complying with Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively. In my opinion, it seems like Stephanie's under the impression that if she ride or dies for Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively, that she's going to be protected. Brian ends his statement by saying, "We reiterate again that there is not and has never been a smear campaign except for the one being waged by Blake Lively's party, including Ryan and Stephanie Jones in collaboration with the New York Times."
Van Zandt subpoena was released by her own people. Whoever that was that released it from your own camp to Daily Mail on the contingency that it would never be published, they wanted to get you. It was for sure a mole. You're going to tell me that somebody from your own camp gave info to the Daily Mail thinking that it would never be published? Impossible. No, it was a mole and they wanted it published. Maybe it was this guy. Either that person is a complete moron or they knew what they were doing and wanted that released. And they wanted us to find out about Van Zandt. Let's take a minute and think about that. So Blake's own people released the subpoena on the contingency that it wouldn't be published. The sweet karma and irony of it is that Daily Mail decided to dig deeper and find out everything about Van Zandt, and then the mommy sleuths did too. The fact that the lawsuit is about Justin smearing her name in the press, but then the press gets this info and smears her name on their own. Oh, the sweet karma.
Now, just this week, there has been new legal documents filed in this case, like Justin Baldoni's movie company, Wayfair, and his publicist, Jennifer Abel, both filed new claims including violation of Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, breach of contract, defamation, and fraud against Stephanie Jones. They accuse Stephanie of snooping on Jennifer's private messages all the way until January of this year and plotting this flagrant abuse of process with Blake Lively with this subpoena to essentially take them down. Jennifer's new filing also accuses Stephanie of making bizarre claims about Jennifer to her staff based on supposed information from psychic readings. Shout out to the psychics out there. Quote, in one instance, Stephanie announced to Jennifer's subordinates that she had learned through psychic readings that Jennifer was an alcoholic and a gambling addict. Jennifer added that the claim had no basis in reality and instead raised alarms about whether Stephanie was in the midst of a mental breakdown, which I would be offended too if one of my coworkers was trying to say that I was drinking and gambling because it's so far from who I am. Like, maybe get your money back from your psychic. But of course, Stephanie Jones's team is responding. Jones's team added that Jennifer's latest filing offers no evidence for her claims and that many are recycled. It's almost like she's not denying this. Jennifer's court document said although Stephanie has always been volatile, she now appeared to be actively unraveling. On a different occasion, Stephanie Jones announced again per her psychic that Jennifer Abel would soon be pregnant with twins, humiliating and infuriating Jennifer, who knew that she was struggling with fertility issues. Wow, yeah, that's gotten really personal. I would be so annoyed. Like, fired her, she's out. Stephanie's lawyers shot back, calling the new claims just a distraction and noise, and a few debunked conspiracy theories. On the same night that all these documents were amended, Blake and Ryan were attending the Time 100 Gala in New York City, and they seemed unbothered.
Ryan Reynolds made an appearance today at the Time 100 Summit, and I think we finally broke him. We all know his wife Blake Lively was named one of Time's top 100 influential people of 2025, yet she was nowhere to be found at the summit, and Ryan Reynolds did not mention her one time. He did ramble on about things that didn't make sense, and of course avoided any questions about the lawsuit, but also his wife. At the very height of their $400 million lawsuit, you would think he would be publicly showing his wife a little bit more support. Isn't that the whole reason he was at the Time 100 Summit to begin with? To support whatever this was? I think he's had it with the drama, and maybe those blind items about them living separately are true.
Even though Ryan wasn't trying to acknowledge Blake, she was there, and Megyn Kelly, of all people, told the Daily Mail that Blake shouldn't be there. She accused her of bastardizing the Me Too allegations in her quest to sue Justin Baldoni for harassment. Jennifer also accuses Stephanie of stealing her personal data from her PR company phone when she announced that she was quitting in July 2024. Jennifer claimed that Stephanie had illicit access to her personal text messages through an iCloud account, and she didn't know that until January of this year. Which is why we're getting the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act that's being filed here, because that is creepy if your old employee had your login to read all of your messages and was keeping up on them. Jennifer also made some claims about what it was like to work at Jones Work. She said it was abysmal and that it had a toxic workplace culture. Staff constantly gossiped and complained. Jennifer even said that Stephanie would regularly turn on deafening music so that she could berate her employees free from scrutiny. She quoted an unnamed former employee allegedly saying, "I don't think there was one day in the office that someone wasn't crying." Jennifer claimed that when she left and Stephanie Jones seized her company phone, that her PR boss had been sharing her private text messages with the entire office, mocking and disparaging her. The filing even claimed that Stephanie Jones retained access to Jennifer's iCloud for the multiple months monitoring her phone, which is so freaky. It's sad because this entire lawsuit, it's not only ruining like Blake and Ryan and potentially Justin's lives, but everyone else too, like Stephanie Jones's career and Jessica Abel and all these people who aren't super rich like Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni are. Someone left me another comment and they also mentioned Stephanie Jones in here. They asked me to look into Blake's fake charity. It's a shell company that's located at a specific address in which Stephanie Jones is involved, and the agent is also on that payroll and submitted the subpoena, and another woman who was working her way up behind the scenes all of a sudden left that company to work for these two in Hollywood, and come to find out that Blake directed Taylor's video and used the Deadpool director or someone high up in that franchise that has 4 daughters, and guess which 4 girls were in Taylor's video? Yep, you guessed it. Look deeper into their companies and their shell companies, you'll see more.
Why did People magazine remove this older article about Blake Lively's anti-sex trafficking efforts? So you can find this article is mentioned here, but the link is broken. Here's a copy of the article from the web archives, and the part that mentions Blake Lively's, anti-sex trafficking efforts. It talks about some other people as well. I am not really clear on why they removed it. Here's the Google AI explanations that list some links and things like this. I don't know if this is tied in with the Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively situation. I'm very suspicious of things like Blake Lively's activism and supposed anti-sex trafficking efforts, given, for example, her and Ryan Reynolds' alleged or apparent sexual misconduct, to say the least.
Now, I want to go back to Van Zandt for a moment. Van Zandt was first set up in Delaware in 2008 before Ryan and Blake had even met, and it first filed to do business in California in 2010. Its California filings listed Eric Rothschild as the agent for the firm, based in San Diego. A former colleague of Eric's told the Daily Mail that they were there in the room when this account was set up. It was as a vehicle for their telesales and marketing business. It was shocking to hear that Blake and Ryan were later linked to this firm. They said, "I remember sitting around with Eric Rothschild when we came up with the name. We thought it sounded official and cool and old East Coast money or whatever." Rothschild and Van Zandt later caught up in a lawsuit for allegedly failing to follow through an office lease. They were sued by other parties in San Diego in 2010 and 2011 as well. Actually, in one lawsuit by the Wayfico company, it looks like they were awarded $100,000 against Van Zandt in 2011, which tells me that Van Zandt was up to some shady business if the judge found them guilty. And here you can see some of the addresses linked to the business LLC. And here's the lawsuit in which they lost and had to pay $100,000 to Wayfico. Eric Rothschild filed for bankruptcy the following year, but the source who worked with him said they later discovered that he had multiple names, including Brian Ukehart and Brian Knapp. So it looks like this Eric guy is doing some shady financial businesses. The Federal Trade Commission filed a case against Eric in 2010, saying he failed to comply with their subpoena investigating his company with violations of consumer data laws.
Did Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds try to scrub this potentially very shady website from the internet? This website seems to be associated with their company, Van Zandt, which is associated with the potentially fraudulent lawsuit that was filed last year that may have been filed to potentially skirt the legal process and obtain certain communications that I believe Blake Lively and others wanted in connection with the Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively saga that's been occurring. So as you can see, this website, it says copyright 2008 here. This is from the Internet Archives. You cannot find this anymore. It's associated with this guy, Chuck Walrath, who states that he was working there. There's a contact listed for him. I'm not sure how he's involved, but he was based in San Diego, which is where it appears, some of these suspicious activities may have been occurring. Very strange. And Chuck Walrath also may have a connection to Response Makers. That came up under a search for him. Response Makers is a company that seems to be linked to all these people as well. I think people were initially thinking that Van Zandt wasn't much of anything, but they had this whole website and someone who appears to have been working for them, maybe even before Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds got involved. Also, I could not find any further information on Van Zandt on the California business website, aside from the entity that seems to be linked to Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively. So I think it's very likely that this website is linked to them.
Now, I don't understand how Eric and Blake and Ryan all ended up working under the same LLC or owning the same LLC. It looks like maybe this was established in Delaware and moved to California, and possibly Eric had not paid his dues to keep the LLC name under his behalf. This person adds that the only way that Ryan and Blake could have any involvement is if the corporation had expired and they could have renamed it, or I suppose it's possible they bought the existing corporation, but there's no way in the world that any person with a brain would have wanted to buy that company with all the legal stuff that it was involved in. California records show that Van Zandt became inactive in 2013. Then the next filing was in 2021, listing Blake Reynolds, which is Blake's married name, listed her as the CEO, secretary, and chief financial officer. So she's essentially the big boss. Now, this TikToker did a great job of getting information about Van Zandt, and here's their video.
What if we were all wrong and the Van Zandt Inc. used to file the lawsuit wasn't the old one from the ScarJo days, and it was actually this one that was only filed in January of 2019. And guess what? The address is different. But wait, it's only 2 minutes walking distance from the original Van Zandt address. So I originally stumbled upon this second Van Zandt Inc. while I was working on the Liz Plank story that Katie Pope broke earlier, talking about the fact that Liz Plank had an LLC that had the same address as the original Van Zandt address, that 888 address, right? Well, the problem with that is everybody's reporting that Liz Plank started that business last year, 2024, but that's not true. She just filed like an annual report last year. But as you can see right here, it does the certificate of status, and you can see the date of initial filing with the Department of State, July 6, 2017. And it seems like there's a lot of confusion about that. She does have the same address as Blake and Ryan. Let's not get that twisted. She also has the same filing agent that Eric Binder, but there is no way the Les Planks production company was only established a couple months ago. A annual statement and annual report, which is every year or every other year, you have to file something to let the state and whomever know you're still active. So that's what that filing that's confusing everybody is. Address being the same address as Blake and Ryan, 100% weird, completely bizarre. We need to talk about it. But the big thing that everybody is, harping on right now is the fact that the business was established in 2024, and so it's sketchy. That's not facts. I want to clear that up before it's too late and everybody jumps on it. What we need to be looking at. Because the real question here is, why is there a second Van Zandt Inc. that was established only in 2019?
Shout out to that TikToker for getting to the nitty gritty, but I do think that there's so much more information we're going to find out when it comes to the It Ends With Us lawsuit. It's going to be wild to see how schemy Hollywood could be behind the scenes. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in a new one soon. Bye, guys.